You think you know someone after 10 years of marriage. You think you understand every word they say, every glance, every silence. But all it takes is one moment, one dinner, one laugh too loud, to realize the man sitting beside you might be a stranger after all. This isn't just about a cruel joke. This is about betrayal, the kind that slices deeper than any lie. This is what happened when my husband humiliated me in front of his friends, and then laughed, as if I wasn't even there. The night had started out like any other celebration. Derek, my husband, had just landed a big promotion, regional director of his firm. He insisted we celebrate with a dinner party at a high-end bistro downtown. He invited a handful of his closest colleagues and longtime friends, people I'd met in passing, but never spent much time with. I wore my favorite navy dress, the one he said brought out my eyes. It was a chilly April evening, and as we stepped out of the car, he looked at me and smiled. "You look amazing," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Felt genuine then. I held on to that moment longer than I should have. The restaurant was glowing with soft amber lights, the air thick with the scent of garlic and wine. Laughter and conversation echoed off the tall glass windows. When we reached the table, Derek's friends stood to greet him. Claps on the back, boisterous congratulations. And then they looked at me all at once. "This is the woman behind the man," Derek said proudly. "The real boss." Seemed sweet, the kind of comment you'd expect. They chuckled politely, and I smiled, unsure where to place my hands. The waiter came by, pouring wine none of us asked for yet. We toasted to success, to the future. But as the night wore on, the jokes shifted. It started subtly, Derek recounting a story about how I once accidentally sent a grocery list to his boss instead of to him. "Had tampons in the subject line," he said, laughing. "His boss still calls me Mr. Feminine Hygiene." The table erupted in laughter. I gave a tight smile. I'd heard that one before. Then another, how I once forgot to turn off the oven and nearly burned dinner on our anniversary. I waited for him to stop, but he didn't. Every new story chipped away at something in me. Every chuckle from his friends made the restaurant feel smaller, tighter. He likes to joke, I reminded myself. He's just trying to be funny. But then came the moment that shattered everything. They were talking about work, long hours, high-pressure deals. Someone made a sarcastic comment. "Must be nice to come home to a stay-at-home wife. No stress, just yoga and Pinterest boards." Derek grinned. And then he said it. "Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if she married me just so she could be a professional leech." Time froze. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. With that smug half-laugh, looking around the table like he'd just dropped the punchline of the night. Like I was part of the joke, not the wife he claimed to love. They laughed. Not all of them, one or two looked away, but enough did. I sat there, wine glass halfway to my lips, pulse pounding in my ears. My face burned. I laughed too. A hollow, shaky sound I didn't recognize. What else could I do? I wanted to disappear under the table, to rewind the night, to scream. But instead, I smiled, cheeks twitching, and excused myself to the bathroom. The bathroom was empty. I locked myself in a stall and sat, breathing shallowly, as the tears came hard and fast. I wasn't a leech. I gave up my job when our daughter was born because we decided it was best. I managed our home, handled the bills, supported his career at every turn. I made sacrifices, and now I was the punchline. The voices outside the stall grew louder. Two women chatting, fixing their lipstick. One of them mentioned our table. "I think she's Derek's wife." Poor thing looked like she wanted to vanish. They laughed, soft but cutting. I waited until they left. Then I stood, stared at myself in the mirror. Eyes puffy, makeup smeared. I wiped my face with trembling fingers and practiced a smile. The mask slid back into place. When I returned, the tone had shifted slightly. The check had arrived, and Derek was signing it with a flourish. He looked up and said, "There she is." Ran off before dessert. I smiled again, teeth clenched. As we walked to the car, he took my hand like nothing happened. "I think that went pretty well," he said. I didn't answer. He looked over. What? You called me a leech, I said quietly. He laughed. Oh, come on. It was a joke. You know I don't mean that. Didn't sound like a joke. He sighed, annoyed now. God, you're so sensitive sometimes. It was just banter. Banter. That's what he called it. My dignity, my sacrifices reduced to banter. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through the blinds, warm and indifferent. Derek was already up, brewing coffee and humming under his breath. He looked normal, comfortable, like a man who hadn't thrown his wife to the wolves just hours earlier. Morning, he said cheerfully, sliding a mug toward me across the kitchen counter. I stared at it for a moment before responding. Did you think about what you said last night? He blinked. Oh, you're still on that? His tone was light, dismissive, like I was making a mountain out of a molehill. I didn't answer. I couldn't trust myself to speak without breaking. He sighed. Look, it was just a joke. Everyone was having fun. You're reading into it way too much. Would you have said it if your boss was there? I asked. That got him. His jaw tensed. I don't need this right now, Nora. I've got back-to-back calls all day. Can we not? He turned away, muttering something about sensitivity and overreactions. And just like that, he closed the conversation. Like he always did. The worst kind of manipulation doesn't shout. It whispers. It makes you question your own reality, your own reactions. In the days that followed, Derek was back to normal. Or rather, his version of normal. He brought home flowers the next day, white lilies, my favorite. Left them on the kitchen table with a sticky note. To my favorite leech Redheart. He thought it was cute. Funny. A way to prove he didn't mean any harm. I stared at the note for a long time, then dropped it into the trash, where I thought it belonged. But something deeper had taken root in me, doubt. About him. About us. About how many times I had smiled through humiliation, believing it was love. One evening, I decided to bring it up again. We were watching TV, something mindless. He was scrolling through his phone, only half watching. Why did you say that in front of your friends? I asked, trying to sound calm, not accusatory. He looked up, annoyed. Still, I just want to understand why it was funny. What part of me being a leech is funny? He scoffed. You're taking this so far out of context. You laughed. Remember? It wasn't a big deal. You made it a big deal. His expression shifted, from irritation to something colder. He set down his phone and leaned forward. You've always been too sensitive, he said. It's not my fault you can't take a joke. And there it was, the rewrite. Now I was the problem. Not what he said. Not the fact that his friends laughed while I crumbled. I was the fragile one. The overthinker. The drama queen. It was textbook, and I didn't even recognize it then. But the version of me that used to nod along and say, maybe he's right, she was starting to fade. A few days later, I got a message from Clara, one of the wives from the dinner. We'd never been close. Polite smiles at company picnics. Christmas cards. That kind of thing. Her message was short, but it stopped me cold. Hey, I know it's not my place, but I just wanted to say, I didn't laugh. I saw your face. I'm sorry you had to sit through that. You didn't deserve it. I stared at my phone, the words blurring behind tears I didn't expect. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Derek's laugh echoing in my head, and the laughter around the table, and my own hollow chuckle, trying to belong, trying not to make a scene. I replayed the years. Not just that dinner. All the times he made me the joke. The center of some humiliating story. The one who forgot. The one who spilled. The one who couldn't handle pressure. Always under the guise of humor. Always brushed off with, relax, it's just a story. But the stories were always mine. Never his. I started writing things down. Every comment. Every dig disguised as a joke. Not to keep score, but to see the full picture. I even dug up an old group chat with his college friends, back when we were still dating. He'd called me clingy, too emotional. A bit much sometimes. I remember how he used to show me those messages and laugh. Don't worry, babe. Just guy talk. You're amazing. I used to believe that. Because when you love someone, you want to believe the best in them. You give them the benefit of the doubt, even when it costs you pieces of yourself. But now I was collecting the pieces, one painful memory at a time. For the next few weeks, I played my role with practiced precision. I still packed his lunch, still kissed him on the cheek in the mornings, still asked about his meetings, smiled when he made those same tired jokes. From the outside, everything looked the same. But inside, something had gone hollow. It wasn't bitterness. Not yet. It was detachment, a quiet retreat into myself. I began observing him like a stranger in my own home, noticing the way his eyes glazed over when I talked, the way he interrupted, corrected me, minimized things I cared about, little things. But when you add them up, they weigh more than you'd think. One night, after he fell asleep snoring on the couch, I found myself staring at our wedding photo. We were standing on the beach, barefoot in the sand. He was smiling wide, pulling me into his side like he couldn't bear to let go. And me? I was glowing. But looking at it now, I realized something that chilled me to my core. I don't recognize that woman anymore. Not her eyes. Not her hope. Not the way she leaned into him like he was her home. I'd lost her somewhere along the way, piece by piece. And he never even noticed. Clara messaged me again a few days later. I hope you're okay. I know it's none of my business, but Derek's been making little jabs about you in the office. Stuff like, she's got it easy at home, and wish I could nap through life like my wife. I stared at my phone for a long time. There it was again, the joke at my expense. But this time it wasn't just at a dinner table. It was at work, where his reputation mattered, where mine didn't. He was building a narrative, a quiet one, where he was the hard-working, stressed-out husband with the lazy wife who contributed nothing. I never gave him that story, but he wrote it anyway. That night, I didn't wait for the perfect moment. I didn't plan it out. I just looked at him across the dinner table and said, "Why do you talk about me like I'm useless?" He blinked, confused, then scoffed. "What are you talking about now?" Clara said you've been making comments at work. Jokes. That I nap through life. He rolled his eyes. Oh my God. Clara? She's so dramatic. Are you seriously believing gossip now? She said it wasn't just once. And what if I did? He snapped. It's true, isn't it? You're always home. You don't have a job. You don't know what real stress feels like. I stared at him. There it was. Not a joke. Not a misunderstanding. The truth. You really think I don't do anything? He didn't answer. He just went back to his food. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed long after he'd gone to sleep. The silence of the house was suffocating. So I started writing again. Not just thoughts this time, but evidence. I wrote down every time he'd used me as a punchline. Every time he'd embarrassed me publicly and then gaslit me privately. Every time he'd praised me in front of others just to devalue me behind closed doors. I wrote about the early days too, how he'd guilt me for wanting time alone. How he'd mock my hobbies. How he'd use money to make decisions for both of us. The patterns were all there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. 2 days later, I met Clara for coffee. She looked nervous but kind. I'm sorry if I overstepped, she said. No, I replied. You gave me something I didn't even know I needed. She hesitated. Can I be honest? I nodded. I've been around men like Derek before. They wear charm like armor. But underneath, they chip away at you until you forget who you are. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded again. Because deep down I knew. This wasn't about one dinner. It was about a marriage that had been rotting from the inside for a long, long time. That night, I didn't bring it up again. There were no accusations. No yelling. Instead, I did something scarier. I started planning. I called an old friend who ran a freelance consulting business. Started organizing my resume. Made a list of everything I'd need to get back on my feet. I wasn't leaving. Not yet. But I was getting ready. Because I wasn't going to spend another year being a ghost in my own life. I started small. A new haircut, shorter, sharper, unfamiliar. I wanted to see someone else in the mirror. Someone less accommodating. Someone with edges. He barely noticed at first. Different, he said, then went back to his phone. But Clara noticed. So did my sister when I FaceTimed her for the first time in months. You look clearer, she said. I don't know how else to explain it. Clear. That was exactly the word. For the first time in a long time, the fog was lifting. Every morning, I woke up an hour earlier than Derek. I'd make coffee, sit at the kitchen table, and open my laptop in silence. I updated my resume, reached out to old colleagues, joined online forums. I started writing again, 2 blog posts, small articles, even a few short stories. At first, it felt strange, like I was stepping into someone else's life. But as the days passed, I remembered, this was me. This had always been me. He had just buried her under years of mockery and doubt. One evening, he looked up from his phone and asked, "You've been getting up early lately. What's going on?" "Just doing some writing," I said casually. He nodded slowly, but I saw the flicker of suspicion behind his eyes. I could tell he didn't like not knowing everything anymore. Control had been his oxygen. And now, I was cutting the cord. It wasn't defiance. Not yet. But it was independence. And for a man like Derek, that was more threatening than anything I could have screamed. 2 weeks later, I got the email. A freelance client I'd pitched had accepted my proposal. A series of articles about emotional abuse hidden inside marriage. They didn't know it was my story, but it was. Payment wasn't much, but it was something. My something. When I saw my name on that byline, something inside me cracked open. Not because I was paid. Not even because I was published. But because for the first time in years, I'd created something no one could take from me. The shift didn't go unnoticed for long. Derek started getting irritable. Snappy. He questioned why I wasn't as present. He started calling my writing cute. Mocking my work like it was a hobby. A distraction. "I don't know why you're wasting your time," he said one evening. "It's not like we need the money." That was the moment I knew he felt it. My pull away from him. "We don't need the money," I replied. "But I need something that's mine." He scoffed. "You sound ridiculous." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I finally sound like myself." And for the first time, he looked afraid. It happened one weekend. We were invited to a friend's barbecue. Same circle, same group of men who had laughed at me that night. I hadn't wanted to go, but I did for closure, maybe. Or to see if anything had really changed. It didn't take long. One of the guys made a joke. Something about housewives having it easy. Derek joined in. Laughed louder than anyone. Then turned to me and said, "Right, Nora? You know all about the luxury life." I stared at him. Right there, in front of everyone. But this time, I didn't shrink. I smiled. Then said, loud and clear, "I've actually been working. Got a few articles published. Maybe one day I'll write about how men confuse humiliation with humor." Silence. Then, a few nervous chuckles. One of the wives clapped quietly. Derek's smile faltered. His hand tightened around his beer bottle. I held his gaze. I didn't look away. Not anymore. He didn't yell when we got home. Didn't speak either. But the silence was thick. Charged. The next morning, he asked, "Are you trying to embarrass me now?" I sipped my coffee slowly. "No. I'm just not protecting you from yourself anymore." That shook him. He wasn't used to me having boundaries. Wasn't used to me having a voice that didn't exist to soothe or please. And the truth was, he didn't know what to do with this version of me. The blog began growing. Readers started commenting, sharing stories, saying things like, "You put into words what I lived through for years. I thought I was the only one. I wasn't a wife anymore. Not just a wife. I was a voice. And every story I told stitched another piece of me back together." Even Clara submitted a piece under a pseudonym. She'd left her husband 2 years ago. Quietly, carefully. "You don't have to scream to leave," she wrote. "Sometimes you just walk away." Quietly, while they're still laughing. After the barbecue incident, Derek grew colder. He wasn't shouting, no, he was more careful now. but the air was thick with resentment. Every question I asked was met with a sigh. Every answer clipped and short. He could feel the shift, and he hated it. But by then, I was already too far gone to care. I had opened a private bank account, saved every penny I made, filed paperwork quietly, gathered my birth certificate, my degrees, the title to my car, things I hadn't touched in years. This wasn't just a rebellion. It was an exit strategy. And I wasn't going to look back. The lawyer. I met with a divorce attorney on a Wednesday afternoon. She was calm, confident, and sharp. The kind of woman who looked like she'd seen everything and couldn't be shaken by much. When I explained everything, his public humiliation, the emotional manipulation, the years of minimizing, she didn't blink. "I've seen this before," she said. "They think if they don't hit you, it's not abuse." I nodded. "But you're doing the hardest part," she added. "You're leaving before he breaks you completely." Those words stuck with me, because that's exactly what he'd been trying to do. The night I told him, the house was unusually quiet. He walked in, loosened his tie, and dropped his keys on the counter like always. And I was waiting. There were no theatrics, no shouting, no dramatic ultimatums, just truth. "I'm leaving," I said. He froze mid-step. "Excuse me? I've spoken to a lawyer. I found a place. It's done." He blinked, confused at first, then amused. "You're serious? Come on, Nora. You're not built for that kind of life." That laugh, the same one he used with his friends, rose in his throat. But this time it died halfway, because I didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't beg. I simply handed him the envelope with the legal documents. "I'm not built for your life," I said. "I'm building my own." He tried to bargain at first, tried to play nice, then turned cruel when kindness didn't work. Accused me of being ungrateful, of destroying everything we built. But the truth is, we didn't build anything. I maintained it. He just took up space. He even tried to guilt me financially. "You'll struggle," he said. "I supported you, but I had already done the math. I wasn't scared anymore. I'd rather struggle alone than suffocate with you." That shut him up. I left on a Sunday morning. The air smelled like rain, like fresh beginnings. I didn't take everything, just the things that mattered. My journals, my laptop, the framed picture of me on that beach, glowing in a way I hadn't in years. I left the wedding album. He could keep the memory. I didn't need it anymore. As I walked out, I half expected him to stop me. He didn't. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. But for the first time, his silence didn't control me. The apartment was small. A one-bedroom with squeaky floors and too much sunlight. But it was mine. The first night, I sat on the floor, eating takeout straight from the carton. No one mocked my habits. No one rolled their eyes when I spoke. I felt scared, yes, but also free. I wrote until 2 a.m. that night. 3 full chapters of a book I hadn't even meant to start. The words poured out of me like floodwater breaking a dam. I was finally telling my story. All of it. A month later, I published a post titled, "When the Joke Is You, Life with a Man Who Thought I Was a Punchline." It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was honest. Raw. Exhausting. True. I woke up the next day to over 10,000 shares. Emails from strangers poured in. "I thought I was alone. You just put my marriage into words. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." One message stood out most. "Your strength gave me the courage to pack my bags. I'm leaving tonight." I cried reading that, because it meant something. I meant something. 6 months later, my book is nearly finished. The publisher I once interned for reached out after reading my blog. Said they'd be honored to publish my memoir. I laughed when I read that email. Not because it was funny, but because Derek once told me, "No one's going to care about your little stories." Now, people did. And more importantly, I did. I don't think Derek will ever truly understand what he lost. To him, I was always just there. A fixture in the home. A name on the tax return. Someone to joke about, lean on, disregard. But I was never his joke. I was the woman who made that house a home, who loved him through things he'll never have the courage to admit, who gave and gave and gave until I finally learned how to keep something for myself. If he ever reads this, I hope he understands something. You didn't break me. You revealed me. And now, I laugh too, but not at anyone's expense. Just in wonder at how far I've come since the night you thought I'd stay small.